Marilyn Monroe. The name says it all. Icon, class, history, riches, but also sadness. She rose to fame in the late 1950s and died under somewhat mysterious circumstances in 1962. But she is still every bit as famous today as she was back then. 60 years have passed since her death, yet she remains an icon, a star, and an inspiration to many. Even Kim Kardashian recently found herself drawn to the late bombshell, though that's a topic for another day. Marilyn's childhood was all but wonderful, and her teen years were filled with sadness. Even her love life seems to have been cursed. Whether she was killed, suffered an accidental overdose, or committed suicide is still a mystery, though fans all have their own theories. But the fact remains, Marilyn Monroe lived a fascinating life, and was worth quite a bit, even more so in today's money. So join us as we take a look at the life and net worth of the late Marilyn Monroe. Her birth name was Norma Jeane Mortensen, and she was born on June 1st of 1926. Sadly, Marilyn had a less than ideal childhood and spent many days being tossed around by the child welfare system. Her mother, Gladys, was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia when Marilyn was only 8 years old. Since she had never appointed a legal guardian to take care of Marilyn should anything happen to her, the young Marilyn became a ward of the state. Marilyn never really knew her father until today. No one really knows exactly who he was either. Of course, there is speculation as to who he might have been. In 1917, Gladys married Jasper Baker, though the marriage didn't last very long and the pair got divorced. In 1924, Gladys got remarried to a Norwegian immigrant, Martin Mortensen. This marriage didn't last very long either, and the couple got divorced a few years later. This is a trend that pulled through to Marilyn's life as well. Somewhere during the time, though, Gladys met Charles Stanley Gifford, who worked at RKO Pictures and fell pregnant. While it is widely thought that Gifford was Marilyn's biological father, it was never confirmed. Had the stars aligned a little differently at the start of her acting career, she might have met Gifford, and well, who knows how that would have played out. Gladys listed Marilyn's surname as Mortensen on her birth certificate, yet she was baptized as Baker, but thought to have been a Gifford. It seems the sadness and sorrow that followed Marilyn right up until her untimely death started at birth. And while she tried everything to escape the same fate that followed her mother, things never really seemed to work out for her. Well, apart from her battle with 20th Century Fox, that is. We'll tell you more about how she took on and won against one of the biggest production companies of all time a little bit later. Marilyn realized early on that she wanted to become an actress. Her reason was once again filled with sadness. She is reported as having said, "I didn't like the world around me because it was kind of grim. When I heard that this was acting, I said that's what I want to be. Some of my foster families used to send me to the movies to get me out of the house, and there I'd sit all day and way into the night. Up in front, there was a screen so big, a little kid all alone, and I loved it." Apart from having to move from orphanage to orphanage and from foster family to foster family, Marilyn was also sexually abused throughout her childhood. Perhaps this is why she herself so desperately wanted to have a child of her own, to try and right the wrongs of the past. While there's been a lot of speculation over her of being pregnant at least once, it just wasn't meant to be, and Marilyn died childless. In 1942, she was living with her aunt and uncle, who we now know as one of her many sexual abusers. When they moved out of state, Marilyn had to return to the orphanage, since she was only 16 years old and wasn't considered an adult. Under the law, though, she was old enough to get married, and in order to avoid going back to an orphanage, she did exactly that. Marilyn got married for the first time to James Doherty in June 1942. A year later, the newlyweds moved to Santa Catalina Island, after Doherty was enlisted in the Merchant Marine. Here, Marilyn started working at a muttonins factory. It was an incredibly boring job, and not something she wanted to do at all, but it was a move that would change her life forever. In late 1944, she met a photographer, David Conover, who had been sent by the U.S. Army Air Force's 1st Motion Picture Unit to the factory to shoot morale-boosting pictures of female workers. By the following year, Marilyn had quit her job and decided to become a model. She left Doherty behind and moved away shortly after she signed a modeling career with the Blue Box agency. It was a bold move, one of many she made throughout her career, but Marilyn was bold and she craved excitement. Her pinup girl modeling career took off instantly, and within a year, she appeared on 33 magazine covers. Soon, an opportunity to act came her way, and she grabbed it with both hands. Interestingly enough, 20th Century Fox wasn't all that moved by her screen tests, yet they gave her a standard 6-month contract anyway to stop her from signing with RKO Pictures. Imagine if she had gone to RKO instead. Imagine what could have happened if she'd met Charles Gifford. In In 1946, Marilyn Doherty got divorced and her acting career started taking off. Things moved slowly at first, but she was determined to become one of the best actresses Hollywood had ever seen. Over the next few years, Marilyn worked incredibly hard in her career. She took on odd jobs and roles and attended acting classes, all in hopes of becoming the it girl. Little did she know that she would make it, and little did she know that her legacy would live on for longer than her short career. She appeared in at least 38 films during the course of her career, and while she didn't really earn that much per film, she still managed to rack up, excuse the pun, a pretty decent net worth. We'll tell you exactly how much she was worth a little bit later. Marilyn signed with 20th Century Fox in 1950 and quickly became one of their biggest stars. However, she wasn't treated the same as other actors. She was always typecast, she wasn't allowed to venture into other roles, and surprisingly, she was paid far less than any of the company's other stars. This is something Marilyn found great offense in, and she started rebelling against the company. So much so that in 1954, she was suspended after she refused to begin shooting yet another musical comedy, The Girl in Pink Tights. She refused to take her suspension, lying down, and moved to the East Coast, where she and photographer Milton Green founded their own production company called Marilyn Monroe Productions. It was yet another bold move by the blonde bombshell, and one that was soon labeled as instrumental in the collapse of the studio system. She knew, though, that she simply wouldn't be able to finance productions by herself, and agreed to attend talks with 20th Century Fox when she was approached. By the end of 1955, Marilyn and Fox signed a new 7-year contract. Under their new agreement, Marilyn would be paid $400,000 for 4 new films, and she would be allowed to choose the projects herself. She would also have free reign in choosing the directors and cinematographers. So while she was known as a dumb or ditzy blonde, she was far from it. Her failed marriages are as much a part of her story as her acting career. Marilyn got married again in 1954. Her second marriage was to Joe DiMaggio, a baseball star. Fans of both stars were elated over the union, and the pair was seen as Hollywood royalty. Sadly, their marriage lasted only about a year. Much like her marriage to Doherty, the relationship was marred by jealousy. It was during Marilyn's marriage to DiMaggio that she filmed the famous scene where her white dress flared up while she stood on a subway grate. This stunt apparently sent DiMaggio's jealousies through the roof. In 1956, not long after Marilyn's divorce from DiMaggio, she married Arthur Miller. While the relationship was never blessed by her fans, things seemed to go well for them at first. However, Marilyn's substance abuse started to increase, and it put a lot of strain on their marriage. In 1960, only 2 years before her death, the couple got divorced. While Marilyn never managed to find true love, she was able to build quite the net worth. But before we tell you more, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. At the time of Marilyn's death in 1962, she was worth an impressive $800,000 or approximately $7 million in today's money. For a woman who, at first, wasn't paid very well for her craft, and for someone who didn't exactly shy away from lavish expenses, an $800,000 net worth in the early 60s really wasn't that bad. Marilyn was quite known to spend her money freely and give some to relatives, employees, and even strangers. She also spent lavishly on her home and her wardrobe. Her death might have been labeled as a suicide, but fans have always felt she was murdered. Whether she was or whether she overdosed by accident, we'll probably never really know. But how incredible would it have been if Hollywood could have had her for just a little bit longer? Maybe long enough to find true love, or long enough to have had children.